everyone who's going to be here is in attendance, so we will open up the regular meeting of the Delaware Historic Preservation Commission. Would the staff please call the roll?
Ms. Herring? Here. Mr. Nicely?
Here.
Ms. Riviera?
Here.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Here.
Councilwoman Keller?
Here.
Vice Chairman Coleman? Chairman Hatton?
Here. I believe Mr. Coleman has sent in fact, he told us at last meeting he'd be absent. With that, can I get a motion to excuse his absence, please?
Moved.
And a
Second.
second. Thank you. We have a first and a second. Could you call the vote, please?
Ms. Herring? Yes. Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes. Number 2 on the agenda, approval of the motion summary of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting held on October 23, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. Those of you who missed the last meeting, we were unable to approve that because we did not have enough people to create a quorum who were at that meeting. So it is up again for approval. Has everybody had a chance to look through that? Any changes, edits, deletions, additions?
I
Not,
move
we
to
could get a
approve.
motion to approve?
Yes.
Did you get that? Okay, second, please. Someone?
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll, or the vote, please?
Ms. Herring? Yes. Mr. Nicely?
Abstain.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Abstain.
Councilwoman Keller?
Uh-oh. I was going to abstain because I wasn't even on the commission then, but I'll say yes because
If you've
If we-
read them,
I read
Yeah.
them, so sure, yes.
That's fine.
and Chairman Hatton?
Yes. All right. Number 3 on the agenda, approval of the motion summary of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting held on January 22nd as recorded and transcribed. Again, has everyone had a chance to review those? Any changes, edits, additions? Not, entertain a motion to approve.
It's moved.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the vote.
Ms. Herring?
Abstain.
Mr. Nicely?
Abstain.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy? Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes.
That will come back.
Okay. I think we're short again on that one, so we will put that on the agenda for the next meeting. All right, number 4, regular business. 4A is 2020-0200, a request by Indus Hotels for an amended certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a hotel at 7 and 27 Spring Street, which are Zone B3, which is a community business district, and located in the transitional sub-district of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Staff, do you have a report that you'd like to present, please?
Yes, and first I'd like to say, for those of you who are new this evening, we start with a presentation of the staff report and a PowerPoint, and you are then invited to come up to the front table where you'll give your name and address and ask and answer any questions from the commission. In an informal review, there's no official action by the commission. This type of hearing requests input from HPC about your project. And then for a certificate of appropriateness, the action results in an approval with conditions, or a denial of your request. And according to the codified ordinances, Chapter 1190, for the Historic District overlay, you have the right to appeal HPC's decision to City Council via a written request to the council clerk. And then I believe we have comments from the absent commission member.
Do you want me to read that into the
Why don't you
record?
maybe do the staff report first and then do that?
Okay. All right. The first staff report is for the Indus Hotel, Spring Street site redevelopment. The location map are 2 parcels at 7 Spring Street and 27 Spring Street. And this is the zoning of the property. And you can see there are various types of zoning as described in the staff report. On the historic district, the parcels are located in the transitional sub-district. And it's at the very southern end of our historic district. And this is an aerial. And, uh-oh. Not sure why it's doing that. Okay, we're having a technical difficulty with one of the screens here. The applicant had received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission on September 26, 2018. And this was for the demolition of the existing structures at 7 and 27 Spring Street, and the construction of a hotel on those parcels. And this was via HPC case 2018-2382. And a copy of the certificate and the approved renderings of a Hampton Inn by Hilton hotel is included in the staff report. And the applicant is coming before HPC tonight to request an alternate brand for this site, and it's called a True by Hilton Hotel. And by way of reminder, the existing parcels that are on the site were approved to be demolished. And with this particular new design, the applicant and the project architect had taken all of the materials that were approved on the previous hotel and incorporated them into the new design. And the applicant and project architect are here, and so I would request their assistance in going through the presentation of the new hotel.
Sure.
So if they would like to come
You
up.
guys could step forward, name and address into the microphone for the record, please.
I'm David Kozar with Indus Hotels, 1555 Lennoxtown Lane, Columbus, Ohio, 43212.
Brian McNally with Myers and Associates Architecture, 232 North 3rd Street, Columbus, 43215.
Okay, thank you. Do you need spelling on those? Good, okay.
Okay, so the hotel is in the same exact footprint and the same height as the previously approved hotel. And this is the layout of the new hotel on the first floor. And I think I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I'll speak quickly and then let Brian take over. But from a year, when was it before?
2018.
Wow, a lot of familiar faces. I think many people were here then too. I think at that time, we mentioned a Hampton Inn. At that time, it was kind of loosely whether or not we were going to be Hampton. We were working with Hilton. It was going to be a Hilton brand. I think we showed some signage, but really didn't ask for signage approvals. They were kind of holding place as well. Since then, a lot's transpired. True is definitely the hotel that Hilton would like us to brand here. It's a newer brand. It's a 3-year-old brand that's really, I think, up to about 150 hotels in 3 years, so it's growing tremendously. They are not traditionally dealing with a lot of architecturally transitional or historic areas. Their staff's not real easy to work with, I would say, in many ways, but we're trying to. And I think we've come up with a good design. What started really from the inside out with it. The design for the first floor of this hotel from what we had before to now is much different, and part of what this hotel brings differently than the other, it's a very active lobby, so it has 3 or 4 different zones within the lobby, and it's meant to really get the guests to congregate there, and congregate, meet, do things there, get out, see the area, and come back. The rooms are a little bit smaller, but the addition of the space on the first floor, we're really excited about with how that worked. What that then did is it required us to kind of move where the awning and stuff was, or the drop-off area in front was, to have the facilities work inside. And then that started to drive into then the design features that the brand True has, and working with them in the last couple months to try to get to what we're presenting to you today. So that's kind of the evolution, but for the most part, yes, all the materials are the same with some added materials and maybe a little bit added detailing that we didn't have the first time around, that it's progressed a lot further through Hilton's involvement, from the last time we met with you, so.
Right, so as David said, the previous concept was based on a Hampton Inn by Hilton, very different type of hotel. We did have previous approval on the exterior concept, but in changing brands, we didn't want to just change the signage. It's not something that Hilton would approve of. They do have specific guidelines for each of their brands that we'll call their signature elements of each hotel brand. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen a True hotel, but it is not going to fit in historic Delaware. So we definitely didn't want to show anything too offensive to the area. Obviously, we want to be respectful of the historic nature of the development and all of your time. So I think we were able to adapt the True brand signature elements in a version of a brick building that is something that would be approvable by brand, but also something that blends in with the neighborhood in a nice way. So the materials that we have proposed are the exact materials that were previously approved by the commission. The limestone base, there's like a little pink type brick, that's brick color A. The vertical score brick in the middle is the same. The only thing different really is the introduction of brick color B, which is a little bit darker band that you'll see on the east front elevation. And the reason for that move in the design is a nod to the original prototype of a True hotel, which kind of on the end of the building has like a wedge shape that's built out of ephes. Again, not going to work in this context, but to try to get back to something that's reminiscent of that brand, but still respectful to the area. So that's kind of the development of the dark brick into the project. The other thing that we had adjusted that David had mentioned is the porte-cochere. Instead of being a center-loaded lobby where you would enter into the center of the building, which really, in our eyes, kind of bisected the site in a way that makes both sides, unusable. We had decided to pull the porte-cochere off to the one side to really open up a green space that may lend itself to some really nice landscaping or hardscaping. We had brought in an outdoor fenced-in patio area that would be off the meeting rooms of the lobby space. But I think it really opens up the site to some cool landscape features. The other thing that we were looking at in some talks with Ohio Wesleyan, which is the neighboring property, is some potential for additional parking from their lot. And then in order to get access to our site from their site, given the height elevation between the two, we were looking at a open pedestrian bridge from their parking site, and you see it to the right side there. There's another shot further in the presentation. Is a way to get guests from parking up on that level into the hotel without having to walk down the sidewalk and around. So that's kind of the concept there, and we're looking at the bridge that we have here on this building, which is an enclosed pedestrian bridge, something very similar to that, just a metal-clad bridge with open guardrails to get from one site to the next.
And so in this particular design, you had also offered 2 options for the front entrance that you had wanted input on.
Right, I think we're leaning towards option A, which would be the previous one, which is a simple, single sloped canopy, sloped backwards towards the building and up higher towards the street level. We think it kind of, with the elevation change, it kind of draws your eye upward as you're looking at the building, a little more inviting than just a basic square canopy. It kind of opens up towards the street area, but then also just a simple double post system in the back for supports, and then a single wedge structural shape in the front with cantilevered canopy. And instead of doing just a covered version of a canopy, we kind of wanted to open it up, let some light through, so it's a polycarbonate panel cover on the top of the roof. Then we're also thinking about, there's 2 guest rooms right above that canopy, and how does it look from the inside, not just, how does it look from the outside as well. So we're hopeful that we can get option A approved.
Right, so
Is it-
that would probably be similar to the pergola that was approved for Cohatch's building in the front. It has that open concept on the front, or on the top.
Okay.
Okay. And then there was another option, going through, this is the north elevation, which is facing Spring Street, south elevation facing the college, the east elevation, which will be facing Spring Street, or, I'm sorry, Sandusky. And then the west elevation. And we talked about the different entrances, illustrating, this is illustrating the different entrances in context of the building. And then this gives a street view context from Sandusky west down Spring, and then northwest view from Spring towards Sandusky. And then this is the pedestrian walkway, as it is coming off of that west elevation. And then this was another option that you had wanted to discuss with the commission. This is the east elevation. And did you want to explain the differences between the two?
Right, so the darker brick that we see here on the corner of the building is the stairwell on the interior of the building. So there's really no opportunity for windows into the stairwell. So it's kind of a blank wall. And we're looking at could this be a canvas for some kind of art project, some kind of public art project? So we're kind of showing a mural here. We had just shown an example of an old postcard. That doesn't have to be what it is. It's just open for something on this facade. And we're looking at, okay, if we're not able to get something like this going, could we do some faux window infill? So we're starting to show that in option B you see on the front side of the building. And if the mural is not an option, we could look at, bringing in some of those faux windows on the east side of the building as well. But just to show a couple different options of the same corner of the building.
Okay, and these were some additional examples of murals that were included in the packet, and then the materials. So, all in all, city staff is very pleased with incorporating all of the previous materials, design elements, and the addition of the walkway is also very appropriate as it's, similar in design to the walkway between City Hall and Cohitch Building. And then they had the 2 points to discuss on the entrance and the proposed mural.
And do you have the previous application? I think that would be helpful if we could see photos from what was previously approved.
It's in the packet.
I
Yeah,
meant if you have it, you don't have it electronically?
not offhand.
Since we,
Can you give me a second?
that'd be awesome, thank you. Since we have a fairly full room tonight, I think it would be helpful.
Want the old packet?
The presentation should be under 2018 planning.
Which one is it? 2382? I'm sorry, just, hold up. Is that it? Is that what you want? Yep. Okay, I'm going to try something. This would be,
The previous one.
Okay.
so what, is there a certain,
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to kind of basically show the elevations and the colors that were approved and compare and contrast to what we have now. Since as we determined it was 2018 sometime, so it's been a while.
you're on mine now, you're on my screen. These were the materials?
No, the elevations that actually show the whole.
You want the context?
I think if you just kind of go through those, maybe slowly, and let people take a look at those so that we can, like I said, compare and contrast to what we have now.
Okay, this was the original layout where you can see the central. You can see the,
Nope, you have to point it on
oh,
mine. Actually, it's not.
oh, no, that's not going to work. You can see the central entrance on that. Then these are the materials from the last time compared to.
I'm not able to put both screens up,
It's okay.
unfortunately.
Just
But-
show the elevations for
Yes.
what was
Yeah.
approved nearly 2 years ago.
So I wasn't here 2 years ago. Was the mural approved then?
It was discussed, but I don't believe so.
No, I don't- It
because
was,
it's-
with signage and murals, we really
Yeah.
kind of left on the sideline. It wasn't
Mhm.
really, because we didn't know at that time exactly
Okay.
what was happening. So
Right.
today, we're talking about signage and mural.
Mhm.
They're part of it, but back then, it was more of a secondary. We weren't actually asking for approval.
Okay.
of those.
Yeah, and typically with murals, unpainted brick isn't able to be painted in the historic district. So that's the main difference. The murals that do appear are only on brick that has previously been painted. right,
So
so this is
it looks kind
the
of orangey in
north.
this, but that's the same, what you called pink brick?
It is, yeah,
Okay.
we were able to pull the same exact materials, and I actually have a material board here if you want to look at it. But we're definitely able to find the same exact materials that we use. The only difference being, the introduction of a little bit of brick that is on it.
Could you pick it up on top of the table, because we're not, I don't know if anybody else is tall enough to see it, but I'm not. Thank you.
Yeah, but these materials are exactly the same as what was presented in those images. The only difference is the introduction of the darker brick.
It looks a lot different, the actual material than the rendering.
Yeah, and it looks different on my computer screen, the person right next to me, so we figured getting the actual material.
Mhm.
that's what it's-
It looks a lot more natural. On the screen, it looks a lot more apricot.
Yeah.
I
and
wouldn't-
Same problems last time.
Mhm.
Yeah, between like what you see in the building versus the image of the brick, there's a vast difference there.
Yes.
One's pink, one's orange. We had tried to adjust our rendering a little bit, and I think this even shows a little bit different. This is a little bit more redder than it shows, this is like peach.
Yeah.
But this is the actual. It's just hard to get a good representation.
Right.
Color.
Sure. No, that's fine. We turn that around and let everyone else take a look too.
Have the other one more.
And the cornice in the original design is dark, and that one, it's light.
Yeah, so we adjusted that.
Yeah.
What was the thinking with that change?
Just thought it looked too dark on that building. Yeah, and if you look at I think if you keep scrolling, there's the rendered views of this.
What?
Yeah, so we just thought with the limestone base that it would work well with the bottom side of the building instead of such a dark cap on top of it, given the tone of the brick that we were using.
How different, you guys probably have looked at it, your main body brick, how different is that from the student center? Did you ever wander up there and,
I think it's a little bit lighter.
that
This-
would be my thinking, but
Yeah,
I just
just
wondered.
a little bit. And if you look closely at that, it has like white, I mean, it almost looks like dust. It doesn't come
Mhm.
off, but there is a little light dusting on it. But it does have a redder tone than what showed up in the renderings.
Right. So this might be a good time to read Commissioner Coleman's comments.
For case 2020-0200, Mr. Coleman writes, "I'm fine with most of the changes. The two concerns I have are the large mural on the east elevation of the plan. To begin with, the standards do not permit this type of installation. If HPC allows a mural for this project, then we will have effectively opened the door to similar requests on future applications. I feel strongly that we must adhere to the standards and not allow this. Because this application required a variance to the standards regarding height, I believe HPC must ensure that any signage does not harm the aesthetics of the downtown, even if that means that signage is less than the percentage of the storefront stipulated in the standards." He continues with, "I would not be supportive of the proposed changes in materials regarding the two types of brick used on the east elevation, nor the use of two different brick styles on different floors of the north elevation. Materials is different between third and fourth floors on the easternmost section of the north elevation. I think using the different materials on the center section of the north elevation is fine, as it looks somewhat like the type of infill building that has occurred through the evolution of the downtown. Using the two different styles of brick between floors does not seem appropriate in the historic district."
Thank you.
Can I ask something about murals?
because in our architectural standards, on page 17, it's signs permitted in the downtown core and transitional sub-districts. And on page 18, there's a whole section on murals. And in it, it says a new mural shall not advertise a product or service or bear the name, logo or trademark of any company or individual. Mural designs consisting of or substantially based on the logo or trademark colors of a company are prohibited. Murals may be located on the sides or rear of buildings. There are no limitations on the size of murals. Existing murals may be restored to their original appearance even if these do not conform to the above requirement. Such restoration is strongly encouraged. Existing murals shall not be defaced, removed, or obscured. Now, that confuses me. Why can we not have a mural?
So again, you can have a mural if the surface is already painted. So you can't, the standards don't allow you to paint.
Where does it say that, though? I don't
It's
see
in the
where.
rest of the standards. So
The
if you go back,
rest of the standards, where?
I can
Yeah,
get through it if you want, but the,
That's fine.
but the standards don't allow anyone to paint brick, okay? So for instance, I think we had talked with the Strand, the wall which would be facing the parking lot is already painted, and that was considered to be used for a mural. I'm not sure what their plans are with that. The other option that really isn't spelled out in the standards that we have allowed, in one instance I can think of in the past, is a mural that is attached to the building, temporarily attached, but not painting the brick. So there may be some wiggle room there. Again, we've only done that one time that I can think of, and it's been quite a long time ago. But yeah, so that's why that they wouldn't be allowed to paint onto the brick surface.
Do we know which section of the standards that is found in?
Yeah, I'm looking through.
Okay, thank you.
Which part, the painting part?
Right.
I can find it.
There are graphics that are adhesive, that adhere to brick, that don't damage the brick, and they're temporary, that could make sense.
What else? Seems like good, why don't we open it up for questions, comments, either staff, applicants?
The two first floors of the darker brick and the tower, those second and third floors, are they in the same plane as the floors above, or do they project at all, the two different?
It would
the
be
change
in
brick?
the same plane.
Okay.
And then we're separating it by a cast stone cap,
Okay.
like a limestone cap.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw a question out just because I happen to be walking, let's see, daughter's piano lesson Tuesday. So we have another applicant in front of us. So I happen to be, and it's kind of hard to describe, but if you kind of walk behind your straight south, north of your building, behind, about where Delaware Run is, which I know you guys aren't local, but it's the water that's running back through that parking lot there. And the one thing I will say is that this is going to be an imposing building, right? Sometimes it kind of feels like with the renderings, not really getting it. And it's always very hard when you stand on a sidewalk right in front of it because you don't really get it. But when you step back, and I'm probably at that point 100 yards-ish, right? And I'm looking and I can see the student center in the background. This is, in your renderings, it doesn't look like that one. It doesn't look that much taller than the art museum. It's going to be dramatically taller than the art museum.
Then the art museum, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so, which is really the only other street level on that side of the street, right? And then you've got the hill. And in your renderings, I'm looking at this, and I'm wondering, for me, black is slimming. I think the darker brick would look better, would fit in better with our Italianate architecture, would fit in better with the student center behind it. And I get that we're a little bit off on your rendering there, but even looking at that and kind of in my mind, transposing that 6 stories and the size of this. So I'm just wondering, is that an option?
Are you, when you say darker brick, do you mean a darker red or like the
The
black?
darker brick that you're using on the band,
Yeah, flipping.
the L, if you want to look at it
Yeah.
that way,
Flipping the two
okay,
reds.
on the corner.
Okay.
the whole thing. I think the whole thing in that brick would tie into our downtown. It's much closer to that brick, which was probably back then, probably sourced probably in southeast Ohio, Nelsonville, those areas. So, you know, a lot of times the brick was the color of the clay, right? And so,
Yeah.
to me, that fits in much better with what we have in the downtown. And also, just because it's darker, I think it would kind of take some of that massiveness away from it.
And that's, you know, we're looking at the introduction of the darker brick and then the horizontal band in the dark brick is a way to kind of bring it down to the pedestrian level and kind of break the facade up instead of it being just window after window after window of the same thing all the way up vertically, which is kind of repetitive, is a way to break up the massing to the pedestrian level.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I agree with that, what you're saying. To me, this one looks less visually imposing as the solid dark brick.
where it's all the same brick all the way
Right.
up.
So I like the way it's broken up, and I do like the white cap on the top too. It doesn't put
Yeah, I think the
like an
black.
end to it.
wouldn't-
It's blends there.
But I get, you know, I get your point with the darker brick, and it's something that, I mean, we could even look at that. You know, we have a 3D model of the building built, and it's easy to go through different color options at this point. So that's, I mean, it's certainly an option to see how it looks.
Yeah, I think especially when you look at put it in relationship to the other buildings, you know, obviously the art museum's a completely different color, but the student center back behind, and then just pretty much all of the Italianate buildings up and down Sandusky.
Yeah, and I still feel like the renderings don't do, like, the actual color
Yeah, no, I know.
justice.
It
To me,
looks very orangey or peaches or
Yeah.
peachy.
We need to get a better printer in our office for you guys.
I love how it looks because it does set it apart and gives a contrast and doesn't try to, I feel like if you try to match it exactly, you'll never get the same exact match. So it's almost better as a contrast than an attempted match that kind of misses the exact shade.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the two county buildings. You know, those are darker and those are very big, imposing buildings. And that was one of the reasons why that decision was made, was to scale this
Bring it
down
down.
a little bit, yeah. And I agree, I don't know who said I think the cornice in sandstone seems reasonable because that's what most of, again, the Italianate buildings downtown would have.
And particularly in the two county buildings, which are on the north end of the downtown, have the lighter sandstone colored cornice. I think it adds a nice sort of bookends on the downtown that way as well, and it does
Yeah.
bring the eyes down. And yeah, for my part, I kind of agree with my peers here that say, I'm okay with the two colors of the red brick, the darker and the lighter myself, but certainly something to consider.
Especially just being next to the art museum. It's such a pure whitish building. I think a solid dark would really make it look tiny.
I think the previous approved Hampton model was pretty dominant, and it would have overtaken Spring Street. And I agree that the two-tone brick and the lighter cornice, just really complements the street itself and the surrounding buildings.
If I could turn our attention really quickly, one area of a few comments that I have, I can space them out. But regarding the porte cochere, I know you indicated you prefer option A. For my part, I would actually go the other direction for option B, and the reason being, especially since in the application you mentioned the historical nod to the historic Allen Hotel that was downtown, had a very similar design to what that option B is, with the two pillars out front. And I think it just fits much more with more of a traditional classic architectural style, whereas the wedge structure really seems sort of, frankly, just sort of out of place architecturally to me. And yeah, too modern.
Right.
And that would be my opinion. I would lean toward option B. See what the other commissioners think, but.
I like option B too.
Agreed.
Okay. Thoughts? Yeah, I agree with him for that thought. So while we're on that, so the bridge, I like the fact that you've, kind of tied it into your metalwork on the front and a little bit of a nod to our first and only, I guess we call it a skywalk here in Delaware.
That was our inspiration.
Yeah.
Right.
think that, when I looked at that, I thought that was a very creative work for a problem, because parking's outside of our purview, obviously, but, you know, it is the elephant in the room, right? And so if you've been able to work that with OWU, I think that, I don't have a problem, especially like on one of the elevations, yeah. So if you have a street tree that kind of blocks that a
Softens it a
little
little
bit
bit.
too, right, just so it's just not so out there.
That's what we were trying to strategically place trees in the rendering, because we're really not sure at this point the actual height that'll end up, you know, we'll get more into the details as we move forward, hopefully. But right now, it may be sitting a little bit high. It would be ideal if that came in on the second floor of the hotel as opposed to the third floor, but, you know, it's
Right.
something that we'll work out in details. We just wanted to run it by the commission first to make sure it was something that was possible.
Yeah, I don't, again, it's kind of uncharted territory. We don't have a lot of skyways, but we have put that in there, and I think really for us, it's more around the design aesthetic, and if it matches, and I don't know, does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Not only to kind of reinforce what you're saying, really, I like the fact that you gave a nod to making it very simple and similar to what we have here at City Hall, I think is adding a nice sort of motif, I guess, through the downtown. If we are going to have some of these kinds of skywalks, it's nice to see them have a similar feel to them.
Okay.
I want to bring up I have some concerns with the signage for the hotel, and I know we could take hours on this, but I just like to share a comment. Maybe the circle, I think the blue is very bright, maybe doing a solid like white or black, and maybe just having the true blue like you are doing on the skywalk, I guess that's what we're calling it, and maybe making that less obvious, because from the street, I think it's gonna be a big, oh, look, you know, I just think it doesn't complement the building.
You're talking about the one up on the
Yeah, the
6th floor up there?
Whereas you like what's happening at
The skywalk, with just the true being blue and the rest of the letters being black, I think maybe doing the circle, maybe you're illuminating that too, correct? So it's gonna have some light.
Would be exterior illuminated.
Yeah, so maybe a light white with the true and blue, I think would be pretty.
We can see, you know, Hilton obviously has guidelines to their
Yeah.
logo, but they do offer options with light-colored buildings versus dark colors, so the tone reads correctly. We can see if there's an option or something that would be approvable with them, but it, you know, it may be a hard ask with the brand to change their logo. But I do get what you're saying. It's
It kind of
bright
doesn't,
blue
it
up there.
doesn't complement the building. You know, the building's so
Yeah.
historic looking that the sign kind of is an eyesore, I think.
And that's why even like on the wedge-shaped canopy,
Let
we,
Hilton hear you say that.
right.
I know, I'm sorry. I think it would work in a very modern area,
Yeah.
very hip area, but yeah, for the building itself, I don't think it does
Well, look,
justice
do you know
for
by
it.
chance what those options, what they do? Because there's really, we get kind of handcuffed on that when it comes to us, and they do give you those options for those different variations, what the background of the building is. But we have never, and we've done a couple historic buildings, gotten around changing like their logo stuff around it. Frankly, I don't know if that true that you put on the side is something that we even got approved from.
It's not.
Hilton. It's
We just
stuff.
did it.
You kind of
Well,
felt the building, you were
So
like, this
we
is
probably did
like
ourselves
that.
a disservice by putting that there because, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the true on the wedge shape, I think that's subtle, it's more classic
Yes.
looking. I
It's
get
not
what
like
you're saying.
bam in your face, yeah.
So the standards, very first sentence, no part of a non-governmental sign shall use a garish, bright, fluorescent, glowing, reflective, or similar non-historic paint or materials. So, you know, it's kind of, you can adapt your building to the environment and the standards. It's probably easier than trying to do it the other way around. Particularly, I think, to Ms. Van Gundy's part, if that's 6 stories high. And so you are, other than the courthouse up the hill, you know, you guys are gonna be the tallest part of downtown. So I think that's important. And just to make sure I heard you correctly, you didn't say internally illuminated, did you?
No, it's external.
Okay, good,
External.
because that's part of the standard as well. You know, one of the things that I found working with logos from on what I do for a living with clients, is there's always, no, we can't, no, we can't, no, we can't, okay, here's, you know, they usually have it somewhere, right? You talk to the marketing people, and whether it's for, you know, black and white ads or whatever, there's
Yeah.
usually an option, so I would agree, unless, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts, but that is gonna be very prominent, and so if we could tone that down, I think that would be good. Another, I'm just trying to look through to make sure we've covered everything, so the ghost windows, or what you guys, I think, called as the infill windows, do you want to talk through that, what your preference is, and?
On the two options on the side.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like the blank wall. You know, I feel like it kind of helps anchor the building on that side. You know, I don't want the mural to distract from this discussion of getting the building approved. I know that may be a touchy subject at this point, but I do like the blank wall, not because it's set up for a mural, but just because of architecturally, I think it grounds that end of the building.
It softens that corner.
You know?
You don't happen to have one where you didn't put the mural in there, do you?
Not in this packet. I do have one here.
Okay, yeah, pass it. So I remember back when we talked about that, you've done, I think, what we really wanted, which was not have an entire blank wall, right? And so you have the infill windows or the ghost windows on the back part of the building, and because you've got a change in materials, I think that, if it were all one and you had them in the back and not in front, I think it would look a little awkward, but because we've got that change in materials that's already defining that, yeah, I'm with you. I actually, the ones that you have on the right there, on the front, those look a little awkward to me. So I think that's a better look, none on the front. It will look a little bit different without the mural. It becomes a bigger blank wall, but
Well, let's do the mural.
yeah.
I'm all about murals. I feel like they're very historically profound. I think that they add, every historical, let's say, Tennessee, any states that have really good traffic and revenue that comes to their downtown have murals. And I think it's something that we as a city probably should really discuss in adding to our downtown, because we do have a younger generation that does visit, that wants to live here. They're moving from Upper Arlington to Grandview because they can't afford those pricing. But our downtown, I mean, any day of the week, Monday through Sunday, we have heavy traffic down there. If we add even more traffic with the hotel, I think we're just gonna have visitors that want to come here, that want to stay. They want to enjoy our downtown, so I'm all about mural. I love the mural, so.
And if there can
I
be
second it.
if there can be collaboration with Ohio Wesleyan, it's right next to the art
Exactly.
museum, that's a great
Exactly.
backdrop for art.
Yeah, and on page 10 of the standards, it talks about the painting of the brick. And it says, for historic buildings, any unpainted surface such as, but not limited to, masonry such as brick or stone shall not be painted. In the event that an existing unpainted surface cannot be restored or preserved through acceptable means, painting of the surface may be considered as a last resort. And so we've carried that through any
For new
unpainted
construction
brick.
then, for new buildings.
Right, we've just carried that through. And then, you know, as Mark had said earlier, what we've done to help compromise is to have the mural put on a very thin panel and have it applied to the brick. And so then it's considered a temporary installment. And even the brick decals that are becoming popular, it's that same concept. And then the OWU did have a mural project this summer, and then the two murals that did go up were on buildings that were already had painted brick. So,
Question, if I may, for city staff then, if that is a temporary permit to apply a mural that's not actually painted on the brick, is that something that is beyond the purview of this commission?
Well, it's considered artwork at that point. So, and so as we've done with previous murals, we've had HPC be made aware, especially if
If it
that
meets the
project.
standards,
Yes.
then it doesn't need to come in front of us. The only thing I can think of was a restaurant that put artwork on the front of their building, and that did have to come through. But if it meets the standards, which is essentially put it on the sides or the back, and you can't paint non-painted brick,
What if you put white painted brick on that corner? Just throwing it out there.
Like painted, like the new brick was painted, and we could say this is already painted.
Yeah.
I had a question, the way that the code reads, is it interpreted as, it states a historic building shall not be painted,
no, it's just buildings in the district.
so it's buildings in the district?
Yeah, so even new builds.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you can work with staff. Somebody pointed out, you are right next to the art museum, and way outside of our purview, but I could definitely see even working with Ross and their folks to have something that would change in and out, that would, tie more, instead of, kind of that old postcard that would maybe, be something that would be art that, you can change. I don't know about the temporary permits. I don't know if it needs to change 90 days. I don't particularly. It's
Doesn't
outside
that
my world.
standard though mean you can't paint the entire surface? And then there's a separate section that addresses when you can paint murals?
No, you just can't. So it's the national standards, and we
Okay.
follow the national standards pretty close. You can't paint brick. That's kind of, one of the 10 commandments, basically, right? Mostly because it can't be undone without really either hard work or damaging.
And then the other piece of it was existing murals, like the old historic murals. And if
Yeah,
you
the
need
ghost
to-
signs.
If you need to repair them, then that might allow
We
for
can.
touch-up paint.
Right, we can do that. So,
So
but,
is the commission fine with this building without the mural? And then we can work to possibly develop something
Yeah, I
as
guess,
a-
so to recap the things that we talked about, I think we are okay with your version of this without a mural, right?
Okay.
I think it sounds like we're okay with the new design with the brick, with the different cornice. I didn't hear anybody have any concerns about moving the entrance from the center to the side. It sounds like the consensus is the second or the,
entry or the camping.
yeah, version of that. And am I missing? And we're okay with the side?
Yeah, no blind windows on the tower at the corner.
Yeah, so it'd be just like that
Okay.
without the mural.
And I would just reiterate that it is important to keep the existing brick colors as historically accurate. Brick,
Okay.
not a light brick. If they were to try to change that, I think then that would be, for me, problematic. I did have actually one additional question, and I apologize if I just didn't catch this well enough in the reading. But on the east elevation, you have the one vertical line of aluminum storefront that looks like window coverings. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little on what is that? It's the ones right up the middle of the building, the silvery looking on the image there.
On the east I
Yeah.
think what you're probably seeing is the profile of the pedestrian bridge. Is it right in the middle?
No,
of
sorry, on
building?
the
Right
east
there.
elevation. This
Those
one's
are
right-
actual windows, I believe.
Are they?
right?
Okay.
Because that's the center hallway.
Okay.
The rest are fake.
I was just trying to understand what you meant on that, where it says east, aluminum storefront. I wasn't clear, because it looked like that was indicating the actual window, and I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure that
so
it actually is
that's-
glass.
We'll say aluminum storefront system.
Okay.
So it's just at the end of the corridors in the hotel.
Oh, okay, I
So it's
understand.
dark anodized aluminum.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? I know this is a lot. I'm sorry, you kind of jumped in
No,
a
I'm
little
just
late
looking
on
for
this, but-
clarification on the mural. So is it's a for sure no, or they could look into it later depending on,
It's mostly outside of our purview is where it is right now. So I think we can pass this, to your point, without the murals, and then if city staff if staff or David determines it needs to come back in front of us, but I don't think it will.
So then it would just go on to council and that could be,
I don't even,
Well, no.
I think it's just administratively approved.
Right, that they can put up a mural, just as long as it's on a very thin panel and not actually painted onto the brick.
okay.
Yeah.
You're getting a more of a billboard then.
Well, no, not necessarily, because billboards aren't
Well, it's
allowed.
still like an
That's what, it's
Yeah.
called temporary,
yeah.
it's a temporary
It's not gonna
fixture,
look
such
as-
as, well,
But
on,
You apply graphics, that is like it's a vinyl, and then you get the brick texture behind it. So there are other options besides printing on a panel and
mhm.
billboarding.
I can't remember if they did, but at one point I remember the Cohatch building right out through these windows, they were talking about on the west elevation of doing something like that.
Mhm.
They were
And,
testing something, I think, that,
Some sort of an application.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But it was something, yeah, that would be applied to the brick,
Yeah,
not
and,
potentially damaging the brick. It wasn't, yeah.
and that was just
They-
kind of
yeah.
taken out of the project to be thought about later.
Right.
I think the overall look of it's not what you're gonna get from a mural, so I don't think people continue with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then if they wanted to move forward with the mural, what would that procedure look like?
They would submit a design, and we would indicate that it should be placed on a thin panel to be considered a temporary
No, I
installment.
mean, what would be the procedure to get a variance or make an exception to the rule and not put it on a thin panel?
To paint the brick essentially?
Right.
Then that would come back to us,
Correct.
because that would be not within the standards.
Okay,
So they would have to
Re-
come with an application.
And request a variance.
Right.
Right.
With a mural.
okay. I'm just curious why staff didn't point out to us in the staff report that it wasn't part of the standards.
That,
The mural. It just says, and I don't remember because I have so many papers in front of me, like staff recommends approval and the plan is wonderful. Anybody remember where that is?
I'm the same as you, I
I
have
just
way
put
too many
everything
papers.
together.
Sorry.
Find it.
It would have been the front.
Would have been in here. I have it
Very-
underlined.
Yeah.
That's the first one.
Staff recommends the approval of this design submission for a certificate of appropriateness with the same conditions issued by HPC via HPC 2018-2382.
It's on page 13.
I'm not finding it offhand.
What page is that?
It's
Page 14, right?
13.
13. So I'm assuming approval of the design submission would include the mural, right?
That,
No?
I don't think so.
that was one of the options to be discussed.
We can just build it into the
So,
regulations.
so it could be approvable, by having it installed on a panel.
So I think I would love to see an actual drawing of a mural and is this what you're, just an idea, or do you have an actual?
idea.
Just
We kind of thought it'd be cool to engage the community to come up with something to do on it. more so
I
than
really
that,
like the
so.
Delaware one.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah,
Do you?
I do.
you're having out-of-town, out-of-state
Right.
people staying.
And I
It would
think
be-
that was your intent, to have it as a marker for
Right.
Delaware. So,
I think I would like to see an actual drawing.
So
So
it,
from what you're saying, you'd rather move forward and not hold up on that?
Well, no, I mean, we're all for the mural and public engagement and having this on here, but we don't want to hold up, like,
Right.
moving forward because of mural, if it's a hot topic, I mean, we're all for it then.
Maybe approving everything coming back with the mural.
But is the approval contingent on us installing the mural? So if for some reason it becomes too cumbersome to get it approvable, is the building okay without it? It seems like that was approved as well.
Yeah.
Which is really what we approved tonight, from what you're
Yeah.
telling me, or at least vote on. And then if you wanted to, you could come, you'll have a little bit of time
Right.
while this is being built, right? So
Right.
you could come
Yeah,
back,
yeah, exactly.
and if you wanted to, again,
Right,
there are certain
under-
things you can do within the standards. If you want to move outside those standards, then you just come back in front of us, yeah, exactly.
With it-
right, so the mural could be included under condition number 4. All proposed signage and the final lighting plan shall achieve compliance with the minimum zoning and historic district requirements and submitted via a separate certificate of appropriateness application, so. And so essentially, yeah, the project can move forward at this point and then come back later with that
That's all.
mural,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you choose to put one up.
Okay, Mr.
So,
Nice?
thank you. For the sake of clarification, it perhaps may not be necessary, but I wanted to get a sense of the commission if we should add 2 more items to the staff recommendations, just to make explicit what we're talking about regarding the mural, and also regarding the design of the porte cochere. If so, then I'm happy to.
Before we do that, I just wanted
motion,
to,
but-
we do have a lot of people here, and we generally don't have a lot of people here. So we are glad to have public comment. If anyone would like to come up, the step on up, name and address for the microphone. Before you guys run off, is there anybody here that would like to speak? Okay, you guys can stay with them. All right, now, do you want to take a
Right.
run at a motion?
I would love to. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a motion that we adopt case number 2020-0200, a certificate of appropriateness for the Indus Hotel Spring Street site redevelopment with staff recommendations 1 through 7, and including the 2 following additional recommendations. Pausing for city staff to catch up with your hand there. All right.
You're good.
Item number 8, that for clarification, no painted mural may be applied directly to any elevation per the architectural standards, period. And then item 9, when you're ready. Okay, item 9, for clarification, the proposed porte cochere design will use option B as submitted in the application packet to include the 4 vertical posts, period. That is it.
Does that capture everything?
So I'm confused still about this painted
Yeah,
mural.
you said applied to instead of painted, because it's only
Well, I said,
painted.
I meant applied directly via paint, but we
Yeah.
can change, I can,
But, well, I guess, because you apply the panel directly to the brick, or you apply the graphic directly to the brick, as opposed to painting the brick. I don't know.
What if you
Well-
change that to read, any mural installed shall meet the architectural standards?
Or you might wish to amend condition number 4 that says all proposed signage, including proposed mural.
we could do that,
And
Part of the
then-
signage package.
Mhm.
all right? So,
That's easy.
there's not a second yet, so I can amend,
Yeah.
right? So strike item 8, and simply add for item 4, all proposed signage, including the proposed mural,
Mhm.
and then include the rest of item 4
Mhm.
after that point.
Did the applicant
I
have
think
a?
we need to pick option A on this too, you liked. Those are the other 2 options, so the.
I thought we
Yeah, like that east, or I'm sorry. Yeah, east, without the faux windows.
Okay, so previous 8 now becomes, or previous 9 becomes 8, and then another option 9. All right, so option 8 is about the porte cochere. And then recommendation number 9 on the, was that the northeast corner? That elevation will choose option A in the proposed application.
It's northwest.
East, yeah. It's towards Sandusky, but north, right?
Yeah. There you go. The other northeast.
Okay, thank you.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion that has been moved and seconded. Would the clerk please call the vote?
Ms. Herring?
Yes.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you for another evening. I really have to say very, very much appreciate it. I know this is not just a standard remodel. This is a really, really big project for our downtown. And I really appreciate the work that you guys have put into it, the spirit that you've come as far as being open. I know you've got your corporate folks that are telling you one thing, so. And the amount of information and graphics that you were provided really, really makes our job easier, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now if I can find my agenda underneath all of this. All right, moving on. Regular business 4B, 2020-0245, a request by Surge Staffing for a certificate of appropriateness for proposed storefront renovations at 67 North Sandusky Street, which is zoned B2 Central Business District and is located in the downtown core of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Does staff have a report?
Yes, I need to get there.
And while she's setting that up, I'm recusing myself from this particular conversation because I had been involved with the project early on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This is for 67 North Sandusky Street, the storefront renovation. And the property is at 67 North Sandusky between West Central and West Winter. The zoning is B2 Central Business District. It's in the downtown core of the historic district, and there is an aerial. And the applicant was before the commission last month to request a renovation of his very atypical storefront design. And this particular storefront, over the years, it has a portion of the storefront is set back and has a planter box installed. And over the years, 1960s aluminum storefront was put on, and then the transom window area covered with plywood, and the planter box and the columns had different brick installed. And so through a series of suggestions from HPC, the applicant has incorporated everything into a final design. And the proposal, the applicant is going to be removing the existing storefront glass system, the planter box, the plywood covering over the transom window area, and a new transom window area will be created through a matte bronze aluminum storefront system. And instead of being inset, the storefront will be flush with the building face. A bronze aluminum sign panel will be installed underneath the transom window area, again, to really define that transom window appearance. And as suggested by HPC, the entrance to the storefront is being separated and to delineate the entrance to the upper floors. And a suggestion was made to provide an inset entry, but because of the limited space and because of the code requirements, that wasn't possible. And so to allow for that larger entrance, a double entry door is being suggested. And as far as the materials, the applicant has brought examples of the bronze color, the window glass, the limestone base, the windows for the second and third floor. Those will be brought back to the original design of a 6/6 window with the arched upper sash. And they'll have the window grills, which will give the true appearance of the actual muttons. And currently on the second floor, there are aluminum jealousy windows, which will be removed and replaced with the design to match the third floor. And bronze gooseneck light fixtures will be installed to illuminate the sign band. And the second and third floor windows will be painted to match and complement the color of the storefront. And then this is a comparison of the existing facade, the initial proposal, and then the final proposal being presented, taking into account the suggestions from HPC at the informal hearing. And then this is taking that proposed design and blending it in with the current street view. And again, staff is supportive of the revised proposal. As stated, this particular storefront was an atypical storefront design, bringing in elements that reflect the architectural standards, including restating that transom window area, creating a limestone storefront window base that matches the infill building to its south. The entry doors will be 75% glass in area. Talked about delineating the two entrances and making the storefront entrance more accessible. And there are other examples of aluminum non-mill finish storefront systems that have been approved by HPC, and that was 25 North Sandusky, 28 East William Street, and 9 East William Street. And staff feels that the resulting storefront blends well with this particular area of North Sandusky Streets. And the proposal would not appear to detract from the historic value of the historic district and appears to comply with the intent of the standards, taking into account the comments from the informal review. And the applicant is here.
Okay. Would you mind stepping up, name and address for the record, please? While she's doing that, any questions for staff from the commission?
Mark Lundquist, Surge Staffing, 1100 Morse Road in Columbus.
If you want to just kind of maybe pick up where we left off a month ago and tell us your thinking maybe around the changes, and let's start there.
Okay, well, per your suggestions, I offset the door over to the left. I originally started with a single, but it balanced better with a double door. With that, I incorporated the limestone that you suggested, which actually was an original, I think before the brick, I did limestone and then kind of came back to that.
Okay.
Added the transom or the plate above with the signage. I like the idea of getting rid of the hanging pole surge staffing sign there. I never really liked that to begin with. So I like having, the surge logo, wanted to illuminate it with, lights that went back to illuminate the sign. The windows would be nice to get rid of those ugly aluminum ones that are there. Restore the ones on top as, much as we can. I don't know the condition, but so we'll start with just the 3 to replace and try to get it to match the 3rd floor. Other than that, that's about it, really.
Did you have a chance, I know last time you hadn't really peeked up there to see what you have for transom windows? Have you had a chance to do that?
No, I haven't. We would have to get permission to go into the apartments above.
Oh, I thought maybe you could get
Um,
to them through the ceiling hole.
No, I haven't had an opportunity
Okay.
to.
Questions from commissioners?
I wasn't here for the first application meeting, but I love it. I think it's a lot nicer than what it is.
Take it out of the 60s.
Yeah. I think you guys did a good job.
Do you want to read Commissioner Coleman's comments? We have a member who's absent.
Mr. Coleman writes for case 2020-0245. Overall, I think the proposal is fine. One concern, in the submitted application, the windows and doors appear to be tinted on the ground floor. At the informal review for this property, the applicant indicated that tinted windows were desired. The standards make no provisions for tinted windows, and I would be strongly against approving tinted windows on this project, as it would be,
What's that?
what's the word?
Incongruous.
I
Incongruous
wasn't following along. sorry.
with the other properties in the core area of the district and will create a precedent to allow for such tinting on future projects.
Okay,
Is that the glass right there?
This is the glass. I never
So it's not
intended to do
tinted?
tinting,
so it's clear.
Or,
but it's just in the rendering.
yeah.
Okay.
Unintentional.
So on the doors, one of the reasons that we've talked about splitting them up was I think, creates a cleaner entrance for your business. But we've gone from 2 to 3 doors now, which to me, that's one too many. It looks like it's a kind of a frontage
I
of
should've-
2 words.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just, certainly the Chase or Old Bank One building is not a good example, right? That's fairly new. And there have been exceptions, Pilsner's and those, but Pilsner's isn't the original storefront there. By and large, most, as we talked last time, most storefronts are inset and have 1 door. Now, you can still meet ADA requirements with 1 door. I know you, for space reasons, you wanted to keep that flush, which I think we obviously talked about last time. We were okay with that. I would like to see that 1 door. I just think 2, 3 doors is a lot in that very small storefront, and it's out of character with virtually all the other buildings other than newer ones.
I started out designing with a
Yeah, I know
single
you said
door,
that.
and it just looked horrible. That's why I ended up going with two. The balance is much better.
Well, I would think you could do one door, even if it's maybe slightly bigger. I don't know, are those two 36 or are they two smallers?
I
Two
think they're
34s?
36.
Two 36s? 136 will meet ADA.
Mhm.
I would like to see that, you know, you could still center it in your storefront space. That just, it looks a little strip mallish to have all those doors out there. Other than that, one of the things we had talked about last time, apparently, you don't want to use an awning because especially when you don't have a recessed door, you don't have any weather protection going in and out.
The concern was maintenance.
Okay.
You know, every 3 or 4 years, you need to either replace or do something to that, and the owner really didn't want to go there.
Okay. And just on your auto projecting sign, you can still have that if you want?
Remove it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can put one back up, just so you know the standards do allow for both the storefront signage and a projecting sign.
I'm sure the branch would love it, but I think a single sign's fine.
Okay.
If they had their wish, they would post, 8.5 by
No, I
11
know.
words in the windows. So,
If I just add, first I should apologize for not being able to be here at the last meeting, so sorry I missed that, but I do very much appreciate the care that you've given in really bringing the historical look to this. Now, that said, I actually do agree with Mark here about the door. I think it would make more sense, simply because I don't know of anywhere else in the downtown that has double doors that I can think of. And I think, as you were saying, I think it is one too many doors, essentially. If we could maybe scale it back so we have more of the band along the bottom and then just the one door in the middle, I think it would sort of fit with the rest of the downtown a little more effectively.
Did we just, sorry to interrupt, but I think it was 45 North Sandusky, maybe last year. Kind of the same setup with the two doors. One's leading up to the apartments and one's leading into the storefront. They're kind of really butt up next to each other where they look like two, and we approved that.
They were close.
I think it was 45 North Sandusky.
But even then, it was only 2 doors altogether, I think.
What's in
There
45?
was,
We
might
started
have
with
been
2
something.
doors. At the first, the
No.
initial proposal had 2 doors.
Right, and so we talked about that, and we suggested moving that over so you had 2 separate, clearly defined entrances, because this one goes up to the apartments. The one to the left goes into their facility, the ground floor office. So we suggested moving that second door, the door to the left, over into the middle, which he was open to, and actually said that he thought that worked better with the flow. So he was open to that idea, but we went from 2 doors to 3 doors, and part of the idea was just to move that apart. And to Aaron's point, I think that gives you more of the limestone down below and anchors that and makes it look more like a storefront that would be in an Italianate building.
Okay, so imagine removing the right door of the 2 centers
Okay?
and then moving the limestone over. I might go with a double panel of glass on the right versus the segments that are there. But, the balance was with the spacing of those supports for the aluminum, it just looked off balance with the one.
I actually like the door setup on the initial proposal. And I can see how it can feel off balance with the revised proposal, because if you just have one door and the door off to the corner,
It just,
it
Yeah.
feels like a lopsided building at that
Mm.
point.
I don't have a problem with the double doors.
Can you go back to the large, most recent? So would it be possible if we went with one door, if we took that one on the left and we lined it up, if we think of this building divided into thirds, because we have 3 windows, so if we lined it up between the first and the second, I think you have symmetry and balance there, that may be what you were looking for.
say that again, please.
So if you keep this door, this one goes away, and it's a little off it's kind of hard to tell. But if this lines up with this, then I think you've got the symmetry that you're looking for.
But then
Can
you
you-
have two, then this is like not equal.
This door just goes away. Are these all equal?
Yes.
Okay. So you're lining up with what is going to be your transoms essentially, right? So if this door goes away, this is already, unless I'm, unless you're off, that looks like that is lined up on that
It
third of the
should be
building.
really close.
This goes away, and these all stay the same. So all we're really doing, this goes away, the limestone comes over and gives you more of a footing to it.
Okay.
I would say if you need double doors,
We don't
I
need
like the
them.
initial approval of the 2 doors on the right.
Okay.
I think then it kind of, because then you have the 6 windows that are equal on the top, and then you throw in whatever's going on with the doors and not being symmetric down there below. It's just not gonna complement the building.
The
I
only
agree.
reason I did the double is
Yeah.
just, it just looked very off balance, but
I'd rather go back to the initial proposal. And if you wanted to add the surge, make the, kind of combine the two? Or,
I might try what he suggested out, just to see, before I make a final decision, but, yeah, I'm just, I can't remember, I think I tried to center the original door and it just looked off. There, maybe not so much.
It's gonna be very confusing for people when they approach your building. Which door do I go into?
Well, certainly if you have the logo over your main door.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts, comments? So we can approach this a couple of ways. It sounds like you're open to playing with it a little bit to, there's a couple of things we can do. We can create a motion that would give you the ability to pick and choose, right? And I think we've got some commissioners that said they actually like your design from last month. That could be in there, the design from this month, or the revised that we just discussed. And that's just an idea. I'm just trying to avoid you having to make a trip back. I don't know what your
Well-
timeline is on this, but,
Yesterday.
yeah, that's what I thought, so.
No, yeah, that, I would like that option, if we could do that, and then once I can see it, I don't lose any time, but I can render the, the one with the door on the left. And if it doesn't look good, then I'll revert back to the, the original proposal. I assume that's what you're talking about.
Somebody else brought up, I think you said that, I wasn't looking. So the one from last month, I think, has some support. The one that you presented has support, and then I think the one that I've talked about has support. So in order just to make it, path of least resistance for you, that we could, if somebody wants to try and, if people are okay with that, first of all, I know you're recusing yourself.
Mhm.
I'm not.
Discussion, what's that?
I'm not recusing myself.
No, sorry, I
Okay.
touched her,
Okay.
I'm with you, sorry.
Right.
Is that,
Giving him 3 options then?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Right.
think, yeah, I mean, once you have it and you feel comfortable with it.
Subject to administrative approval? Is that
Right,
fine with
yeah,
everyone?
we can
Expedite
amend
this.
condition number 1, which already talks about
Okay.
making changes. And so you could draw them up, submit them to me, and then I'd get it to the chairman and reviewed by Dave Eflin, our Planning and Community Development Director, for the final selection. So you could give me, this is my option 1, option 2, option 3.
somebody want to take a run at that motion? Are you writing, Mr. Nicely?
Yes, I am.
All right, so we'll give you a second to
All right.
compose.
Okay.
Time's up,
Um,
apparently.
Thumbs up. Well, here's what I will propose, if that's fine with the rest of the commission. So I would, to keep it simple, and flexible. I propose we approve case number 2020-0245, a certificate of appropriateness at 67 North Sandusky, storefront renovation. Actually, pause that for a second. Okay, with staff recommendations to include after the final word in staff recommendation number 1, the applicant will submit a final selection for entranceways for administrative approval. And then all other conditions would remain as stated here.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. With the, once the clerk catches up, if you would call the vote, please.
Ms. Herring? Oh, excuse me.
Just say
Abstain.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes. Thank you again. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
bringing the extra material in.
Can you clarify option 3 for me? Just before, so I submit 3 examples.
Yeah, so it looked like option 3, can you go to the larger? Go to that one. It's essentially take that door out.
Okay, so that's 3. That I was considering that 1, but.
Oh, I think that 1 was what you submitted last month,
Okay,
which was
right.
your 2 doors over here. 2 is what you submitted now, 3 would be essentially just removing that door. And just 1 door.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Under regular business 4C, 2020-0275, a request by KB 38 Limited for a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed demolition of the rear structure at 40 South Sandusky Street, which is zoned B2, Central Business District, and located in the downtown core of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Staff, do you have a report?
Okay. As you mentioned, the site is at 40 South Sandusky Street between Spring and West William. The zoning is B2, Central Business District, and the property is located in the downtown core. And it also abuts the transitional sub-district as well. And this is an aerial. Tonight's presentation will be concentrating on the rear structure. And so just very briefly, the main front brick building is currently known as Clancy's Pub. And that building began life as a furniture store back in, starting in 1909. And we have a photo here of Bunton's Furniture Store from the 1970s. And this is an aerial, a close-up aerial of the property. And one of the unique features of this building is that the rear attachment or the rear addition is actually a series of 4 additions that telescoped out from the back of the main building. And so over the years from the furniture store, it was added on to. And that rear structure overhangs the Delaware Run and is starting to pitch towards the run. And so this is from the county auditor's office. These are the property sketches that show the main brick building. And this little addition here is actually the cooler that serves the bar. And the rear additions start here. This is the first one, the second one, third one, and then finally the fourth one. And then that first addition is actually attached to the brick building. And so here is the current condition of that back building, starting with the rear addition number 1 that is attached to the main brick building. And here's the cooler. And then this is addition 2, addition 3, and here's a better view of addition number 4. And this is from the south elevation, so from the parking lots to the south of that building. And then this is from the north side, so the other side of Delaware Run. So you can see the rear addition number 1 that's connected to the brick building. Number 2. Here's number 3 and number 4. And over the years, corrugated metal siding was applied to the entire building, which made it look like one huge addition. And as you can see, over the years, it has rusted. The interior wood siding, frame, flooring, it has been rotting and is insect eaten to the point where the chief building official has deemed the back building to be unusable. And one interesting photograph that we do have, this is the Delaware Run right there that you can see through the siding. Now, the applicant is proposing to remove that entire structure from the attachment to the brick building and leaving the cooler addition in place. And then this is the interior shot of that rear addition number 1. And this is the original brick building right here. And then this is the cooler that's going to be improved. And so after that entire rear structure is removed, the applicant will be partnering with the future tenant of the building to make repairs to that back wall. And so the work scope is outlined on page 8 of the staff report. And so number 1 is removing an old wood panel and filling it with brick and doing the inset to still give the appearance of that window opening. The second phase, after the removal of that addition, any brick and mortar that needs to be repaired will be repaired. The third item will be extending that downspout the entire length of the corner of the building. Right here on the inside of the addition, there was a doorway that was used to bring materials in and out of the second floor. And so that will be infilled with a 1/1 wood replacement window. The fifth, apparently there's a lower door opening that will also be repaired and bricked in and repaired as needed. The sixth is the replacement of that entry door that we saw. The replacement of this turn. The replacement of that entry door. And the applicant does understand that it needs to meet the standards of being the maximum 75% glass. And finally, the cooler addition will be repaired. There'll be repairs to the roof. The existing window panels will be repaired. The windows are of course, walled over by the cooler on the inside. And new siding, new hardy plank siding with a 4-inch exposure will be applied to the exterior of the cooler. And the applicant, along with the new tenant that will be going into the building is Todd Tuckey. And the new business is Camp Delaware Brewing Company, which will be a microbrewery and a restaurant. And the project contractor is available for questions as well.
Dan, on the cooler addition, I think that's just concrete block.
It's a type of fiber, it's a siding that's on
Is it?
there.
Okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't around on that side. All right, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
And so the demolition of the rear structure and the repair of that west elevation wall is the first phase of the renovation project to bring that new tenant into the building. But irregardless, if that new tenant does not move forward, being that rear attachment, attached structure is not usable and was recommended to be removed and to get it off of the Delaware Run, we would still like to proceed with the demolition of that structure. And so the applicant and the Camp Delaware Brewing Company are seeking approval from HPC for a certificate of appropriateness to move forward with the demolition. And this is a major undertaking and a major investment in historic downtown Delaware. And the removal of that addition will not detract from the historic significance of the main brick building. And so city staff is supporting the approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and
Questions from commissioners for city staff?
we're at the
Otherwise,
Parties.
if the applicants could step forward up to the table.
Mhm.
And if you wouldn't mind, name and address into the microphone.
Denny Bolton, 8005 Wingate Place, Delaware, Ohio.
Craig King, 5776 Cali Glen Lane, Westerville, Ohio.
We represent KB 38. I'd say I'm the better half, but
Okay, so obviously you're just here for a demolition permit. I will say, again, I did walk around there and photos really don't do it justice. It is, and I was on the parking lot side, on the city parking lot side, so on the run side. It actually looks better from the south side slightly.
Huh.
It kind of looks like it's held up with some concrete blocks and things back
Definitely
there, which it
scary.
may be. So, do you want to tell us about your plans? I don't know that it really matters through the demolition permit, but, you know, generally, I think this is so bad and it's so non-historic, I would be very surprised if we had much opposition. Normally, when we talk about tearing things down, we want to talk about what's going to go in there. So do you have plans for what you're going to do back there?
Well, that's, yeah, if you'd like to bring up
Yeah.
the proposed tenant.
Could we bring the tenant up?
Sure. More the merrier.
Right. Yes, because there will be a separate COA application for the proposed tenant as well. So if you'd like to give your name.
Todd Tuckey, 33 Tarpey's Lane, Delaware, Ohio. And again, we really wanted to just focus on the demolition at this point. Conceptually, we would like to have behind there a building that is an actual brewery, and that's what we're working on at this point. And we'll bring that, any of those things before HPC at that time. There's still things that we're having with utilities and whatnot, that so it's a very fluid process dealing with water in this case. But we will bring that before HPC.
Okay, sure. I don't have any questions. Again, I looked at it, you've seen the photos. Obviously, Jerry has recommended. So, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments before? Otherwise, we entertain a motion.
I move for the approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the rear structure of 40 South Sandusky Street, case 2020-0275.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The clerk, please call the vote.
Ms. Herring?
Yes.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes.
Ms. Riviera?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gundy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Keller?
Yes.
Chairman Hatton?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
All right. Next on the agenda is an informal review, which is 2020-0272, a request by Shade and Shade LLC for an informal review for a proposed renovation of 39 East William Street and 9 North Union Street, which is Zone B2, Central Business District, and located in the transitional subdistrict of the Downtown Historic District overlay. As this is an informal review, I would invite the applicants up. Again, informal, we try and keep this conversational. Really just looking for what your ideas are, and I will just to make sure there's clear understanding. So, A, we are missing one commission member tonight. B, this is not any sort of a pre-approval, so the things that are discussed tonight don't, people are not bound by those when you do bring a formal in front of us. So with that, name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Zach Price with Triad Architects. My address here in Delaware is 328 North Liberty Street.
You want to just tell us about the project? It's probably the easiest way to start.
Certainly. So thanks for hearing this conceptual review. We certainly don't take the demolition of any building lightly. The project consists of two separate building parcels, 39 William Street on the corner there, which has the building that houses Amanda Plumbing in it currently, and then 9 North Union Street directly to the north, which was previously known as the Delaware Cab Company building. That building right now it's well maintained. It's for most purposes vacant. It's used as essentially a garage. So the request is to discuss the demolition of the Amanda Plumbing building there, and then later we would look at renovating and redeveloping the building at 9 North Union. So the Amanda Plumbing building, we've done a little bit of historical research and understand that there was the old Sanborn map. Looks like that's what that is right there. Shows originally a filling station in the location where the current building stands. The structure that is there today, it's unknown whether that's a historical structure. To my knowledge, there's no indication that it was the historical structure, or if it was just a new structure that was built on that similar footprint. The building that is there now, and as you can see on the top left is an older photo, is a concrete block building. The building's been kind of cut up and added to a number of times over the years. So it's, I guess, on the top right there, as you see it, that's about how it is now. It really does not contain architectural features of historic significance, in our opinion. The other item that we're considering here is its contribution to the historic district, and as it is today, or how it might be in the future, and how that contributes to the rest of the historic district. So the hope is to demolish that building, expose a little bit more of the south side of the more historically significant building at 9 North Union there, and concentrate the redevelopment efforts on that. We have not really gotten into any design work yet, but we have talked about ways to maybe screen that parking lot, provide some landscaping, or some other sort of masonry, partial height wall there to screen parking.
So why the demolition? Is it just for parking?
The building, additional parking, the applicant would like the additional parking, as well as potentially to put some type of entrance perhaps on that south side.
So staff did do an analysis, which I'm glad to have you read, Diane, or apologize, we kind of, since it's informal, we bounced back and forth a little bit. Do you want to go through? So I think the last few paragraphs in the staff analysis are important.
Okay. Briefly, the sites are located on the southern boundary of the historic district on East William Street, and applicant understands about the architectural standards. 39 East William Street does not appear to detract from the historic district, and it would meet the definition for demolition. However, the city doesn't take lightly the demolition of the structures in the historic district. And given the grade change at the adjoining property line between the two buildings, the project, the site, and the community might be better served by retaining the structure as an office building to complement services that may be offered at 9 North Union. And parking opportunities would appear to be adequate, given the existing size of the parcel's parking lot, on-street parking, and a public parking lot immediately to the west of the site. The renovation rather than demolition of 9 North Union Street is encouraged since the site maintains local history as the longtime home of the Delaware Cab Company, a taxi service established in our community in 1896 with horse-drawn carriages. That building was constructed in 1925, an earlier time frame than 39 East William Street, and essentially has retained its original configuration for almost 100 years. And in addition, the current and most previous building owners have made substantial investments in the building using their own funds and funding through the city's downtown facade improvement program. Should the project move forward, the applicant will need to continue to work with city staff to achieve compliance with applicable building and zoning codes regarding the parking area and the building use.
Thank you. Comments from commission members?
I do have a question. The oil station, was there any records of that ever being demolished or fire or anything like that? Because to me, it looks like two different structures altogether. Because I mean, look, I don't even know what Amanda Plumbing, how that would even configure into the historical structure that once was there.
So do you mean the building at 9 North Union and then the one at 39 East William? Because those are two separate structures, currently under separate ownership on separate parcels.
Was the oil station on 39?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So I don't see how,
It's sitting on top of it.
yeah,
30
is it,
Oh.
do you see what I'm saying? Like,
It looks like an entirely different building,
it-
right?
yeah, the footprint is not even the same.
Yeah, I believe the filling station, when you look at the Sanborn Fire Insurance map dated February 1950, it appears that the filling station is closer to the roadway. And then you can see there's another, I'm assuming that's a building, and it says oil drain on it. So I don't know if that's the site of that second
The garage area.
building.
Yes. So
And then-
the building kind of down closer to William Street, that was the filling station, is no longer there.
Correct.
That is currently parking lot. The other square right there,
Mhm.
sorry, I can't,
Yeah,
just
it's
read
a-
that, oil drain.
It says oil drain.
That is the approximate location of the current building.
Yes.
And the current building, as far as we can tell, is not historic. I mean, it's been there for, I don't know how many years, but it's a fairly modern concrete block building.
You know what I'm wondering, is if you look at the Pure Oil Station building, just to the left of that canopy where the fuel pumps are, you see there's kind of what looks to be sort of a garage door or double door behind a fence. I'm wondering if maybe that was part of that structure that's still there as
This-
Amanda Plumbing today, where there is still that garage door.
This is, according to the Delaware County Historical Society, that building in the background is 9 North Union Street.
So not that one, I'm looking the image above, the top image there.
That one.
Kind of further to the left, just to the right of the
Behind that
pump
picket
stations.
fence.
Oh.
Yeah, right there where your cursor just was, a little further to the right there.
These,
See, there's kind of that double door. I wonder if maybe that was the Amanda Plumbing building, but they've removed the pitched roof maybe.
well, I believe that's the adjacent parcel where there was a series of residential structures that were demolished.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
believe that's a residential building
Yes.
behind.
Right. I
Okay.
think that is that.
I have a question for clarification. Under the proposal, it says that the applicant is requesting demolition of the building at 39 East William, but then in the staff comments, renovation rather than demolition of 9 North Union. So I just want to clarify which building is
I think if
suggested
you-
to.
I was confused too, but if you read through it,
Continue to read on.
yeah, and well, what they're saying is keeping 39, and then 9 can be a complementary building to whatever's in 39. Because I read through that and I thought I was confused too.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
definitely 39.
Right.
The-
I think
We're
the-
keeping 9.
The
That's what I
community might
understood
be
too.
better served by
So-
retaining the structure as an office building to complement the
Got it.
services offered at 9 North
You
Union.
could ask the applicant.
But still, 39 or 9?
So the ultimate goal is, that we would like to achieve is to demolish 39 East William, the Amanda Plumbing building, that's the top two pictures there. And then that would actually allow for the development at 9 North Union Street to move forward. I don't know that the applicant's interested in moving forward without being able to demolish it, but that hasn't been determined.
And according to the county auditor's office, it indicates that 39 East William Street was built in 1955. And 9 North Union was built in 1925.
So one thing I think that we always are a little bit challenged with on these sort of things is under the demolition, structure contains no features of architectural or historic significance. So outside of our Sandusky core and some of the Winter and a few of those, that describes a lot of buildings. It also describes the building, I always point in the wrong direction, the old bus stop, right? Which is, I think most people would absolutely consider that to be a historic building and an important part of the downtown fabric. I think I agree with staff's recommendation. I'm always hesitant to have anything torn down because right now as it is, particularly since we're not looking at building anything else there, I get it. If it were my world, I would want to buy a building and tear everything down around it, right? Because that would be in the best interest of what I wanted to do. But I don't know that it's in the best interest of the community. There's a fabric to not knocking a tooth out of the smile, and that's certainly more important. But you know, if you think about it, there's that building, the other building, Roops, and then all the way down. So that whole stretch of Union is intact. Considering you're abutting a gigantic city parking lot, it's a little tough to talk about the parking situation, and we've really been hesitant with existing buildings that can be reused. And certainly when I travel to a lot of places, old gas stations, kind of nondescript buildings like that can be reused in really, really interesting ways. And particularly if whatever goes on at 9 Union, as staff recommends, I hate to see that torn down. If you came and said, we've got a plan to put something there, I would be far more open to that. You know, the other thing to keep in mind is that is a major gateway into the city, and I know I just read the city is spending money on improving the gateway. I hate to see us tear things down on the gateway into the city. And again, this is informal, so that's just my thoughts. Go ahead.
Hey, I appreciate your comments. And in principle, I agree with you that it is important to not leave gaps in the landscape, or in the streetscape, I guess we could say. And like you, I am reticent to generally to demolish things, and I always have kind of taken that approach. In this case, however, I think it is important to remember, when we talk about the standards that allow us to approve a demolition, it says it has to have no architectural or historic significance. And I think a key thing to remember for me, at least, and I would put that out there, is that to talk about historical significance or architectural significance, we cannot escape the question of culture. And what is the cultural significance of this building? So like in your case, Mark, you mentioned the old bus station. That has historical value to the city. Whereas I would argue that this 39 East William really does not. And so it's not particularly historic chronologically, architecturally. To be blunt, it's not particularly interesting. And I don't see any cultural value. It's not part of the fabric of our downtown, the way even that the old taxi station there is. So from my perspective, I think it almost would be a benefit to the city, especially given that it is the eastern gateway coming in to the downtown, because it's not a particularly attractive thing for people to see. And I don't see there's nothing there that says, hey, this is what we want Delaware to look like. And this is our culture, this is our history. I think it might be better to remove it now to encourage development so that it is already a vacant spot. So someone comes in and says, hey.
A parking lot is better than a building? Because
Yes, I tend to agree with you, Mark, on
I think
this.
once they're gone, right?
Mhm.
That means no one can reuse it, no one can come up with, we've talked about different things here. This would be a building that we could have somebody come into. There's no architectural details. Somebody could do something really cool with that because they aren't bound by 1880s Italianate architecture. If it's gone, it's gone. It's a parking lot, right?
Mhm.
And someday somebody may develop that corner, but as we've seen in Columbus and other cities, once they're gone, they usually stay gone. Because as values go up, the value of being able to park cars there goes up. That's an ultra low capital, low input business with high returns. We've even pushed back on like the transitional district in Franklin. We said, no, we're just not going to allow things to be torn down to build parking lots, which is really what we're talking about here.
So I would
Also good
agree
points.
with Aaron. I think you presented that very well. However, I would like to see what 9 North Union would be, because I think whatever you do to 9 North Union will complement the demolition of this building. I think coming into town, even adding maybe, I don't know, $500,000 to this building is not going to really change it too much. The footprint of it, you're not going to have a lot of use out of it. And I know there's a lot of issues with parking, and I'm going to say it. We have a parking lot right next to it. If they can kind of work together and highlight that North Union building and actually make it shine, like use something with the taxi service, like implement that in that, I think that would be something nice to be proposed with the approval of the demo.
Right, and actually taking it down would expose more of that south side. And Diane, if you could go back to the aerial really quick. So I agree that, there are buildings there intact to the north, and that, a missing tooth is not a good thing, but it's already, I would say, perhaps a chipped tooth. It's set back in the corner. Doesn't really help maintain that kind of street edge there. So that's why I think taking it down, focusing the redevelopment efforts on the 9 North Union, we certainly would be open to ways in order to kind of create more of an edge or something that establishes more of a kind of gateway or pedestrian-friendly corner right there.
How many parking spaces do you estimate you could fit there?
Probably about an additional 5 or 6, I believe. We haven't laid it out. Just counting the parking spots that are there right now, it looks like 5 to 6.
Already the corner is an entire parking lot.
Right.
I've always hated to drive up that street and just see parking lot after parking lot after parking lot. If you turn off of 23 to the right, you see the big expanse with the Elks and everything. That whole area is paved, and then you come down here and it's a parking lot. Now you're adding more parking. I'm not particularly fond of the building. I think it could be fixed up for some specialty type shop or a little coffee cafe or something. But I just hate to see another big expanse. If it could be landscaped very nicely and well, it might be okay. But just to tie into the parking lot and then into the gas station, and then all of a sudden you're, wow, in the historic district, sort of a wide swath.
Well, and I think whether the building stays there or it's removed, the corner's still a parking lot. So,
Right.
If we can gain some additional spaces, and then perhaps we could lose a couple spaces right up at the street in order to do something that's kind of helps that street edge.
Some greenery, green space would be nice. So are you thinking of putting a south entrance into the 9 North Union there?
That's been talked about. We really have not gotten into the design yet. But that's kind of the thinking, is if you have parking right there, then having an entrance right there rather than parking and then walking down the sidewalk to a different entrance.
I don't know. I would say listening to all the comments, and I think there's some valid points made by everyone, that I would just throw that in, that my comments still stand with my overall opinion of the future of that spot. there is some value, something to think about if you do decide to make an application, I think, of not just saying demolish and leave it as a blank space. Maybe there is some interim possibility that wouldn't be particularly prohibitive in terms of cost or anything else, to create something there so it isn't just another blank spot, whether it is landscape architecture or just something that could maybe make it an attractive site, something that is inviting as you're coming into the city. That's something maybe to think about.
Mhm.
For the record, I agree with Mark's comments. I think it should be a corner. I think there should be a building that pulls you down that corner. The rest, as you go along that street, that's kind of a nice run of building, and it would be great to start there, renovate, develop something new in place of the Amanda Plumbing building, but start that corner strong, pull up, or pull down the street, tie it together, make it more of Delaware, not parking.
Mhm. Yeah, I will say, there's been no talk about doing a new ground-up building. I mean, I agree with you, that would be
Yeah.
fantastic to do, great
Yep.
corner
But
building there, but.
There's potential, if it doesn't become a parking lot, if it becomes a parking lot, then it's not potential anymore, or it's less likely potential.
We have 13, that building's 1,300 square feet, obviously, so give or take maybe 5 additional spots maybe,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Michael Shea, I'm a local attorney, and I am representing a potential user of this site. For you that don't know me, I've been involved in Delaware for a number of years. I am very familiar with this site. When I was growing up, this was Carnes Gas Station. And it anchored the eastern end of a large number, 4 to be exact, gas stations along William Street. And if you look at this property and then you go to the next one, which is Overturf's, which has been talked about changing into a fitness center, but the bulk of that property is near about the same distance to the core city. Then you go on the other side of Willis School, which is the Domino's Pizza, most of which is parking, and that was Quillen's gas station. And then you go to the next block, which is now Franco's, and a large part of that is parking, but that was another gas station. My memory's not as good as it used to be, but growing up here, we had gas station after gas station after gas station. And when I look at the historic design, I think your comments are well made. But if you look at what's taken place, we haven't seen that commitment in dollars. Have we painted over it? Have we, as they always say, dress up the pig? But the fact of the matter is, it's a building that doesn't have a lot of, or no one has been willing to expend large amounts of money to make it happen differently than what's there. I think Amanda put a lot on the exterior, but from an historic nature, it didn't add to the quality of the historic nature of downtown. The other things that you know, and I always like to believe in being completely honest with people. And with 39, we have a report, an environmental report. If you read it carefully, it says, well, there may be, they didn't give it a perfect, clean bill. The other problem is with 9. That may also have some issues, being that it was a cab company, and as a little boy riding their bike on Union Street, used to watch the guys in there at night with the cars elevated and, you know, you don't know what took place. There's gonna have to be those kinds of environmental concerns with doing anything to either one of these buildings. But, you know, I think that when I look at past behavior turning into something that we think is going to be better, I'm not sure that I necessarily see that your comment I thought was very appropriate. It's not that it couldn't be something, but it couldn't be something the way it's situated, and it couldn't address the issues that you're talking about, which is somebody willing to invest dollars. You're still going to probably take down that building, you're just going to move it to the front of the property. So I think that there were a number of issues. I was interested in the one design, the one map that was shown in the property next to it and the pictures you showed through. I did some review on that, and I think that was a kind of like I don't know whether you call it a motel or a boarding house, but it seemed to be in conjunction to that. Those other pictures are long before my time, so I can't address that. But that is not atypical of the gas stations that existed early on in Delaware, particularly over on Lake Street, which was just removed from Delaware and is someplace, I think, in Kansas. So I just think, I'm a firm believer that when you look at the community and I look at the historic nature, I think the building that really has the historic nature is 9 North Union. If done, if an appropriate entry, maybe looking at, as was suggested, realignment of the parking and things like that, could make that a much nicer area. The other problem is that when you go east of this property, look at the setback from the street on the nursing home, look at all the other homes that are way back, and so it's more in line with the line of sight. That the edge of that building would, while it's in line with that, it's not disproportionate. And as a young boy, when the downtown decided to buy the parking lots and make them into parking lots to handle the parking needs in downtown Delaware, it was something. It was a major change, and I think that I think there's always different possibilities, but I think that this building, in my mind, does not add significantly to the historic nature of our community. In fact, that building was built, I think, the year after our family moved to Delaware. So we moved in 1954, and I think it was built in 55.
Yeah, I think it would be a different story if it was the original gas station still sitting there. This is like no significant.
But as you just said, that original gas station was out closer to the road.
Yeah.
So
Anything to take away from BP, that would be great.
I think the other item, taking down a building and having parking there, and I don't necessarily believe that would prohibit future ground-up development on that site. my office and some of my own developments have been in downtown Columbus and the Short North area, and we've looked at a lot down there, and there's certainly parking is a more significant, I would say, issue there. And the property value and the desire for just a walkable neighborhood is such that parking lots, a lot of them have been built over with new ground-up buildings, infilling in between older historic buildings. Because the users that are there, whether they're office users or residents, they're either finding other places to park or they don't have cars. So, I don't know hopefully we'll get to that some point here, but if I had a crystal ball, it'd be great.
Any other comments, questions?
I just have a question about, what are you using, or not you necessarily, but what is 9 North Union Street being used for now?
It's vacant, yeah, and the current owner purchased it in 2013, and he put on a new roof, did the awnings, painting, concrete work, et cetera, and he lives in Alabama or Arkansas, and uses it to come up, when he visits his family up here.
Currently,
And-
in the building now is a number of his car
Items.
vehicles.
Right.
And
So he's using it for storage right now.
I can tell you, the last time that I investigated that building was on behalf of Ohio Wesleyan. They were, as you know, when they built their wellness center, they were doing the whole thing over, and they had to, they were looking to find a place where they could have a weight room. And this had concrete floors, and we reached out to Mr. Green at that time and said, if you're not going to move on this quickly, for about a year, the Wesleyan would like to rent it from you. And he says, no, I'm gonna start working on it. And to his word, that's exactly what he did.
It's a well-maintained building, but it's not really, if I had to, interior style, I'd refer to it as man cave, perhaps. It has some lawn chairs and cars and a TV, and
So what sort of business will be going in there?
a bank, financial business, bank.
So they would need parking. That kind of makes sense.
They're not looking to do a drive-through or anything like that. It's more to cater to small businesses.
In business clients.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone else? All right. Again, informal review, so no action takes place. Appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We do not have all 7 members here, so we will once again table 4E, which takes us to 5, staff comments. Staff, any comments?
We are starting to work on this year's patio permit applications, getting those out, ready for summer.
Awesome.
Yep.
It looks like something out there.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Just how many times that I've been seeing on repeat agendas, this fiberglass clad discussion, how many agendas has it been pushed?
Probably at least a year.
Wow.
We never seem to have all 7 people here.
So I guess one of the things we do on council is we never wait to have all 7. I mean, I'm thinking that we just pick a date and say this is when the discussion will be, and if you really want to take part in the discussion, then make sure you're able to make that meeting, I would say, because at some point, maybe a decision needs to be made on it.
Well, remember, we don't have meetings every month often.
Sure.
So that's part of it. So it wasn't 12 meetings. But yeah, I don't particularly know think it might have been Dave that thought we should have 7 people.
Because there could always be someone missing,
There
and
always
it would
is
never
someone
be discussed, and we discuss everything else.
I know,
So,
I agree.
I don't know how anybody else feels. I'm new, but
I think we did discuss it heavily, but I think it was a matter of, we wanted some time for other to bring additional information to the conversation. And I don't know that any new information has come up since the last time that it was discussed.
I don't think so.
And
I guess I'd just suggest we'll discuss it next time, and
Sure.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I think as far as the history of what we've done so far, I remember we had samples that we were able to look at in depth. We looked at what other major cities had implemented the allowance of fiberglass windows, clad windows. We looked at various standards, and I know our city staff was really helpful at helping collect some of that information. I think that's where we've left it, right?
Yeah, I think that was the additional information was the other historical preservation commissions that have adopted the
Okay.
fiberglass.
so you guys can catch me up and.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other commission member comments, questions, discussions?
I just have one very quick one, and it's just on a personal note to the old issue that we've let sort of die about temporary exterior vestibules on downtown buildings, which I know we've already dealt with ad nauseum, but just as on a personal note, a lot of my in-laws, every time they see me, they give me a hard time about it because they disagree so fundamentally with what decision was made. And so I wanted to bring up that opinion that they have shared with me over and over, that they really dislike how cold it is going into restaurants downtown in the winter.
Yes,
Okay.
I hear that a lot as well.
I had that without any further comment, but there it is.
All right. The next regular meeting, March 25th. Otherwise, I think unless there's any other business, we are ready to be adjourned. We had a motion.
I'll move.
We have a motion and a second. We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That was a long one. We
Our
haven't had one
audience
in a
kind
long
of